can get started canning, we need to talk about the equipment that we'll need. Hi everybody, thanks so much for stopping by the homestead. My name is Sarah from Traditions Homestead, and I am so excited to be doing this series with you about how to learn how to begin canning. Now before we jump right into canning, we really need to talk about the equipment that you'll need. And I would venture to say that 90% or more of the equipment that you'll need, you can probably get secondhand. If you're not in the position to buy all of this stuff brand new, you can find it at thrift stores, rummage sales, garage sales, your mom, your grandma, your sister. So just start looking around and maybe asking around. But if you are in the position to buy these things new, you can pretty much find everything at Walmart or on Amazon. But one good thing about canning is that most of the equipment and things that you'll be buying is pretty much going to be a one-time investment as long as you take care of everything. There are only a couple of things that you'll have to continue buying over and over and over. So let's get started talking about the things that you'll need to buy before we get started. The first thing that I'm going to mention are reference materials. Now, even though you will be learning from me in this canning series, it's really a good idea to have at least one or two books on hand that you can look back on to remind you of different steps and to just have a place where you can find good approved recipes for canning. And there are two that I'm going to recommend. The first one is the Ball Blue Book, okay? This book, it's a Ball Blue Book Guide to Preserving. Every few years there is a new version of this book, and the Ball Company is really one of the premier canning companies that make jars and lids and some of the equipment that we'll be talking about today. But they've also kind of assumed the responsibility of making sure that everyone in the canning community is informed about what is considered like the approved canning practices. And you know, there are universities all over the country and really probably all over the world that they test recipes, they test canning procedures, and from time to time they make recommendation changes for parts of the process. So when the Ball Company comes up with a new blue book, many times there are subtle changes to the processes that we always need to be aware of. Canning is serious. If we make mistakes, if we cut corners, if we don't do things right, we ultimately could poison our family, and we need to do everything that we can to prevent that from happening. So it is very important for you to not only have a current reference book, but also to follow the steps and the guidelines precisely. But this is the first book I'm going to recommend. I'm going to put a link to this in our Amazon shop if you want to pick one up, but they're pretty inexpensive. But this will change, you know, over the course of several years. So the second reference book that I'm going to be recommending, and this is actually my very favorite canning book. I have a million little tabs on there to take me to my favorite recipes. This is also from the Ball Company. It is the Ball Complete Book of Home Preserving, 400 delicious and creative recipes for today. And I'll have this in our Amazon shop as well too if you'd like to take a look at it further. Through the series that we're going to be going through, I will be referring to this book quite often as well. Okay, the next thing we're going to talk about are utensils. Now, you can actually get all the utensils you'll need in one set provided by Ball. I think there's another set by another company, but I really like the Ball's utensils, and so I recommend these. This is pretty much what I'll be using. The set comes all together. It's relatively inexpensive, and I'm just going to pull these out and let you see everything that's in here. Okay, so this is a canning funnel. We'll be using this all of the time. This is what you put inside of a jar to fill it. so that it doesn't like splash all over the place and doesn't like drip down the side of your jar and doesn't get all over the rim here. So canning funnel is a necessity. Next up is a jar lifter. This is so that you're not burning your hands when you are taking jars out of your canning pot or putting them in your canning pot. So this is essential as well. This is called a magnetic wand. You'll be using this to pick up your hot lids out of the boiling water to keep them sanitary and to not burn your fingers when you're reaching in boiling water. And so you'll use them, you know, to put on like that, okay? So you need a magnetic wand. And this, what is this called? I call this a gapper, but that's not what it is. It's called a bubble remover headspace tool. So just to give you an example, this is a jar of my diced tomatoes. When I'm packing them in there, what you're going to need to do is use this bottom end to get the air bubbles out. So that's one use for this tool. And the other use for this tool, you may not be able to see it in the video feed, but there are different levels here of the head space that you're going to measure depending on what you're canning and what canning process you're using. So it's nice that Ball has this like 2-in-1 utensil. Okay, so those are the 4 utensils that can come together in this set. I recommend all of these. A couple things that are not in here that you'll be using that really you probably already have in your kitchen. We're going to be using a ladle and some kind of cotton cloth or paper towels, but I think those are just things that everybody has in their kitchen that we'll just get to when we do some canning. In general, this set of utensils is a one-time investment. Over the course of the years, you may, you know, lose one thing or another. I actually happen to, like, once a year catch the magnetic lid lifter on fire because it gets stuck on the bottom of my pan and I melt it. So I think I've bought like 3 or 4 extra ones because inevitably something happens to it. And the bubble remover, that headspace tool, I put that in the dishwasher once when I still had a dishwasher and it like all melted and stuff. So hey, there's a tip, don't put it in your dishwasher if you have a high heat setting. But in general, these are one-time investment utensils. Next, we're going to move on to canning pots, and specifically we're starting with water bath canning pots. When we can, we're either going to use a water bath canning method or the pressure canning method. For water bath canners, you can buy specific pots on Amazon or at Walmart, and this is one that is specifically for canning. You'll need a deep pot that has a lid, and when you buy these brand new in the store, they also come with a rack on the bottom, a wire rack that will keep the jars up off the bottom of the pot. Now, I've gotten all of my canning pots secondhand. I actually learned about that rack years after I started canning, and I haven't had any problems with that. I will recommend that you try to get one that has the rack and use that, but just for full disclosure, I'm not going to be using them because I just don't have them. But you can get these. They're reasonably priced at the store or on Amazon, but they are definitely, you can definitely find them secondhand. Now, you don't have to specifically have a water bath canning pot to do water bath canning. In fact, I do a lot of mine just in large stock pots. This is just a regular, you know, tall stock pot that you can get at the store or at a rummage sale or the thrift store or something. And these are perfectly fine to get for water bath canning, and it's perfectly fine to get them secondhand. Make sure that you have a lid that fits it. I kind of have some mix and match lids for this one and another one that I use all the time. So, you know, go ahead and just get the pots that you can. The only rule of thumb for water bath canning is that you need to have enough space above your jars. You need at least 2 or 3 inches of space on your pot above the jar, because you're going to be adding 1 to 2 inches of water above your jars. So keep that in mind with quart jars. Those are the tall ones. And you're going to add, 1 to 2 inches of water, and it's going to bubble over and things like that. So keep that in mind when you're looking for a water bath canner. Let's move on to a pressure canner. Now, I use Presto brand pressure canners because they're more affordable for me. I have 2 different canners here, and I just want to show you quickly the difference between them. The first canner I have is the first pressure canner that I ever owned. It is a single stack, which means it only holds 1 level of cans on the inside, or jars on the inside. And there's just a weight on the top that rocks back and forth when you reach the correct temperature. So I will be using this a lot, and I use it a ton. So that's the first canner that I will be using with you in this series. The second pressure canner that I use and will be using in this series is this guy. It's also a Presto canner. I actually have a video about this canner when I got it in the mail, an unboxing, and I go through it piece by piece. If you're interested in knowing more about that, I'll put a link to that video right up here in the corner. But the nice thing about this is that it is double stack. It holds 2 different layers of pint-sized jars, not quarts, not the big ones, but the medium-sized ones, the pint size, and you could probably do half pint, and you could probably do the little bitty ones too. But I really like that about this, that I can get more work done in one pressure canner. The other thing that's nice about this pressure canner is it actually has a temperature gauge that you can actually watch to make sure that it's not getting too much pressure, or that it doesn't fall below the recommended pressure. So I do like this pressure canner, and I'll be using this a lot in our series. So those are the 2 pressure canners that I use and will be teaching you with in this canning series. Now let's talk about jars. There are several different sizes of jars and several different styles. I pulled out several of them to show you that I use. I actually don't use all the types of jars that are out there, but brought a variety to show you. Now, before I get into sizes, I want to talk with you about brands. Here in the United States, there are 2 primary brands of jars that I recommend. The first one is Ball canning jars, and the second one is Kerr. Now, there are a couple more brands of jars, but I have had bad luck with them. I don't trust them. There is an off-brand at Walmart that I tried and had very bad experience with. And then there's another off-brand in the US that I don't trust. I can't remember the name of it. However, in Canada, there is a brand of jars, and I don't remember the name of it, but I will look it up and put it on the screen somewhere here. I think those jars are fabulous. I was able to get a bunch of them on a trade from somebody who had moved to the area and didn't want a can anymore, so I scored a bunch of jars from them, and I love those jars. So if you have a chance to get that brand of jars, pick those up as well too. So there are 4 sizes of jars that I really use often. The biggest size is the quart size jar, and this holds 4 cups of food, 4 cups of liquid. You'll be using this a lot. I use this for tons of things. Since we're a family of 4, I use it for green beans and tomato juice, tomato sauce, diced tomatoes, juice and like fruit juice, just all kinds of things. Okay, so this is a quart size jar. We also use the pint size jar a lot. This holds 2 cups of food or liquids. The half pint jar or the jelly jar holds 1 cup, and then the 4-ounce jar is a half of a cup. Now, I don't use this very often, and you can see that it actually has stuff in it. I use this more for hand salve than for canning. but I did want to bring one out to show you the size difference. So quart, pint, half pint, 4 ounce. Those are the ones that we'll be using on this canning series. Now, there are 2 styles of mouth openings on a jar. The 2 styles are called regular mouth or wide mouth. Now these 2 jars are both quart-sized jars, but this one has a regular mouth opening and this one has a wide mouth opening, and really it's just a matter of preference. A lot of people like the wide mouth jars because when you're cleaning them, the opening is big enough to put your hand in, whereas the regular mouth jar, it's really not. So it can be a little bit harder to clean the regular mouth. Now there are a couple more things I want to add about jars before we move on. Jars are really going to be your largest financial investment to canning. It's a one-time investment for most cases, but you know, the more you get into canning, the more you will enjoy canning, the more things you'll want to preserve through canning, and so the more jars you'll want to collect. So, you know, I think there have been so many times when I've been canning that I thought, gosh, I just need more and more jars, and it seems unending. But I promise you at some point you'll get there. Just keep investing. Keep investing in your family. Keep investing in preserving food for your family, and it will pay off. If you're buying jars new, you'll get them in cases of 12, okay? And the price of them are going to vary from, you know, region to region. The biggest place for me to get jars is either at Walmart or at rummage sales and thrift stores. And actually auctions. I've scored boxes and boxes of canning jars at auctions. Just be aware that you'll need to make sure that the jars you get are actually canning jars versus, you know, mayonnaise jars from the grocery store. The last pieces of equipment that I'm going to talk with you about today are canning lids and canning rings. Now, on a canned jar, when you're canning things, this happens to be diced tomatoes from the garden. When you're canning them, you will put on this lid, which will seal everything in and create a suction on here. And on top of this, you're going to put a ring to hold that in place during the canning process. After you're done and after things have cooled, you will remove this ring and just store it with the lid on it. The canning lids, which look like this, and they come in packs of 12 at the grocery store. You can only use these lids one time, so these will be a reoccurring expense for you. They're under $2 for a pack of 12 of these right now. So this is something that you will need to purchase every single time that you do your canning. Now the rings will last quite a while, except over time the inside of them, because of being in water and those kinds of things, they're going to start rusting and you'll need to replace those from time to time. So when you need to do that, you can buy rings and lids together in a box. I have no idea how much these cost because I rarely need to do this, but that's how you can replace your rings, and your lids you'll need to replace every single time you do some new canning. So that's it. That's everything that you'll need to get started canning. Have you been making a list? Just kidding. I'll put all of that in the description below so you don't have to worry about that. But you guys, there's a lot more of this to come. So if you have not subscribed to our channel yet, make sure that you hit the subscribe button below and hit the notification bell so that every time we put out a new video, you are notified. On our homestead, we are just learning how to blend traditional living with this modern world, and we're hoping that you'll join us to do the same. So you guys, thanks so much for stopping by the homestead today. Take care and God bless.